Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to today's show. We're going to get into a couple really interesting medicinal plants from my book, The Medicinal Weeds and Grasses of the American Southeast, here in just a minute. And our edible foraging plant for spring will be one I think you're really going to like. It's actually one of my favorite wildflowers, which I think is pretty cool that it's also, a wild edible. Just depending on time, may hit 2 edibles and 2 herbs today. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I wanted to go ahead and tell you the announcement. If you get my Judson Carroll Master Herbalist newsletter through Substack, it's a free newsletter, you already know this, and you've probably already taken advantage of this. If you don't, and you just listen to the podcast, go ahead and sign up for the newsletter, because you do get announcements that, come out midweek and such, whereas my podcast is only once a week. But last Wednesday was Ash Wednesday. And, after a lot of thought and prayer, I decided I wanted to do something special. Ash Wednesday begins Lent. Lent is supposed to be a time of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And I just, thought it through, and it suddenly hit me that as an author, probably the most effective almsgiving I could do, along with probably putting a little food in the local food pantry and, trying to help somebody out if I see somebody that needs some help, would be to give away my work. Instead of actually making money off a book, give it to somebody. So last Wednesday, I announced that anyone who asked, who emailed me at judson@judsoncarroll.com, could get one free ebook in PDF format of their choice of any of the 13 books I've written. Response has been great. Been a lot of people take advantage of that, and I'm thrilled. It feels good to give, and if you would like a free ebook, you can go to southernappalachianherbs.blogspot.com. You can see all my books listed on the right-hand side of the page. Click the cover. It goes to a description. I think that's actually an easier layout than my website, which is judsoncarroll.com. I got to do a lot of work on that, and that's something I've been putting off. But anyway, otherwise, you can go to Amazon and just pull up my name as an author, and you can see all my books. Okay. Share this with friends. Tell your friends. They can get a free ebook. It's one per person. I'm doing it through the Monday following Easter. So from Ash Wednesday to essentially Easter Sunday, and even if you email me the Monday following, one free ebook per person of your choice. I hope you will take advantage of this. It's good for me to give during this period, and so go ahead and do it. And just send me a note. Tell me what you want. Judson@judsoncarroll.com. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's a blessing to you and your family, and I hope to be able to do this maybe once a year. Maybe this will be an annual thing. I think it feels better than anything I've done up to this point over the last few years in terms of things along similar lines. The tradition actually is that you, during Lent, fast on certain days, and take the money you would have spent on a meal and donate to the poor. And yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm totally cool doing that. But in, our modern society with all the government programs and food stamps and SNAPs and, people, so many, oh, so many people addicted to drugs and fentanyl and such, and such as fentanyl, I guess I should say, and, they beg for a living. You kind of end up subsidizing their addiction. It's so hard to know who to give to. And it used to be I'd give to Catholic Charities or another religious charity, but they're facilitating human trafficking, and they're also taking millions in taxpayer dollars. And I've said publicly, not a dime. I mean, as a practicing Catholic, I won't give another dime to Catholic Charities. And I think they should be stripped of the name Catholic. They should be absolutely renounced and denounced by the bishops, but they're too cowardly to do it. And Lutheran Family Services is doing the same thing. There's an Adventist, Seventh-day Adventist charities. There are even Jewish charities that are working with the cartels on the border to facilitate human and drug trafficking and making a ton of money off of it. And I'm just like, you can't just blanket say give to charity anymore. You take I can't remember if it's Humane Society or ASPCA. I can't remember, one of those groups. And I don't want to make an accusation that I can't back up, but one of those groups that came out a few years ago, people give money to them, thinking they're giving money to save animals from being, abused or neglected and all that. They actually kill more dogs and cats than all the game animals killed by all the hunters in America every year. So when you give your money to them to save a dog or a cat, you're actually paying to kill the animals. And they don't tell you that, of course. And so many of them, oh gosh, I have huge qualms with Salvation Army. I don't give a dime to Salvation Army. And then others, like, I don't remember, was it United Way? Could have been. I think, wasn't that, and again, I don't want to make an accusation, is it true? I could be mistaken, but that's the one that comes to mind. Maybe about a decade ago, they found that like 80% of the money given to them goes to pay the salaries of the top people working there. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And maybe it wasn't United Way, but, United Way was giving a lot to, let's just say social issue causes I don't agree with. Yes, that was my problem with United Way. They were very much in support of, say, woke politics. Just today, I passed by some Girl Scouts selling cookies. I just went right by. I didn't buy cookies. I love Girl Scout cookies. If they had asked, I would say, well, had the Girl Scouts not started promoting woke politics, I'd be glad to buy these cookies. But as an Orthodox practicing Catholic and conservative person, I'm not going to give money to people who hate me. I'm not going to give money to people who are essentially, in terms of culturally, financially, essentially, building the gas chambers to exterminate me. Is that an extreme statement? Well, just think about the last few years. We've seen like the truckers that were protesting the vaccine mandates be debanked. People sent them money. Their money was confiscated. We've seen all kinds of stuff like that. What do they call it? Where they go on social media and make you a non-person. I mean, they literally strip you. You could be a television personality and suddenly you get no job. It's like blacklisting. The way they complained they did about the communists in the 50s. Well, they're really doing it a lot to people who believe in traditional Christian moral values and principles and conservative politics. And I think you just got to be real careful where you give your money these days. But that's a total aside. And I know I'm probably going to lose some listeners for saying that, but I am who I am. I'm not going to try to cover it up. Anyway. If you listen to the show, you know my personality, you know who I am, and you listen to it probably for the information. And now I'm going to get into the information. But just remember, I'm giving away free books because that was actually the most, short of actually giving a hungry person food, which I'm always glad to do. That was the thing I was most comfortable doing this Lent, given our current political environment and social environment. Yeah, you just got to be real careful where you give your money. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, if it matters to you, and it's my hard-earned money. I work really hard to write these books and to do what I do, and I don't want that money to be used to support things that are the very antithesis of who I am and what I believe. But whatever. Let's get on to. We'll start with the the spring edibles that are coming up very soon. I went to the creek last week where I always harvest my ramps. The ground is still frozen solid, so it's not time here yet, but a few of the daffodils or jonquils, as we call them in the South, are starting to poke up, so it won't be long. I think we're probably going to have an early spring in the Southeast, maybe about 2 weeks early. I'm hopeful. So it will soon be time to get out there and start getting all these wonderful things. This is called Bladder Campion. Now, check this out. Pull up a picture of it. Bladder, Bladder, Campion, Campion. It is a very unique looking wildflower. I've always thought it was one of the prettiest. It's one of the most odd looking ones. And the leaves, though, are edible when young and tender. Okay. Now, the root of the plant is probably something you don't want to eat, but it has uses as well. It contains saponins. Saponins are soap-like substances, so you can actually use it to make like an emergency soap. It will actually, like foam or froth. You can work up a lather. That's the right word. It was used by Native Americans, probably some in Europe as well, as a fish poison. Totally illegal to do this now, but in a survival situation, you can take any saponin-bearing plant. So bladder campion, yucca, a true yucca root, not the one they call yucca in South America that they fry up and serve, which is delicious. Absolutely love that. They're spelled different. True yucca, or oh gosh, there's so many different names. I actually have a completely different entry on that. Spanish bayonet plant, I think, is one of it. It's the one with the pointy leaves that'll poke you, okay? It makes wonderful fibers for making rope and twine. I mean, it's just a great plant for survival purposes. You can weave baskets out of it. The root is very high in saponins. What these do is when you put them in water, where they're fish, if the water's not running too fast, if it's fairly still water, it will prevent their gills from absorbing oxygen. Very briefly, it would kind of makes them faint, and they float up to the top of the water, and that's considered totally unsportsmanlike, and of course it's totally illegal now. But Native Americans and early Americans, that's how they harvested fish. They'd either set up fish traps, whether a basket trap or a weir, or these like corrals almost of stone in a river. Or they'd use fish poisons because they needed food. They weren't out to be sportsmen with a rod and reel. They weren't what is it George Herder said? The majority of what's sold at a sporting goods store is to catch the fisherman and not the fish. Well, our ancestors actually needed food, and so they used such techniques, which are now considered. I don't want to say immoral. Because. There's nothing actually immoral about it, but from a traditional moral standpoint, man has to eat, and therefore the most humane and convenient way to gather that food is the way to go. And this just kind of stuns the fish; it doesn't hurt them a bit. I guess you would just say illegal, and if you get your morals from the government, God help you. But still, it is considered. To be unsportsmanlike and kind of bad for the environment, we'll just say, because you could take more fish than you needed, and we don't want to take more fish than we need. Fish spoil quickly unless you're going to pickle them or smoke them, and of course recipes for that are in my Omnivore's Guide to Home Cooking. I absolutely love smoked fish and pickled fish. grew up around a lot of Jewish folks. Yeah, and a lot of folks from some of the Scandinavian countries. So, yeah, I absolutely love pickled herring and cured salmon and any smoked fish. Really, yeah, I like, I'll smoke some trout sometimes. Um, I have abundant trout in the mountains. One of my favorite ways to fix catfish. Catfish are fairly fatty fish. They don't have a ton of flavor. They kind of take on the flavor of whatever they're cooked in. Really delicious when prepared right. Dust those suckers. Well, first of all, you got to skin a catfish. They don't have scales. You don't scale them like a normal fish. You actually skin them. Okay. Then dust them down with some Creole seasoning and salt. Let that cure sit on them about overnight in the fridge. Unless it's one of those like giant catfish like you can get out of the Great Petey River or different places. I mean, wow. Up around Anson County, North Carolina, that is considered the PD at that point. The PD actually starts where I was born in Blowing Rock, North Carolina, as a little creek, and it turns into the Great PD as it joins with the Little PD and such, and becomes one of the greatest rivers in the American Southeast. People pull catfish out of there occasionally that are hundreds of years old and bigger than cars. I mean, that's just incredible. It's actually not that uncommon to see one that's 150 pounds. I mean, and that's a big old fish. Okay, I mean, I've seen people just like put them in the trunk of their car. There's no other way to get it home, so the car, it's never going to smell right again, right? But if you get one like that, I would definitely try to smoke it. And what I would do would be to steak it and then season it and smoke it, because the fat of that fish is going to pick up the spices so well. And then don't give it a real hot smoke, because it's going to render the fat out. The fat, you're going to end up with kind of but they're not tough meat, but unpleasant texture, cottony or stringy. Same like some people say carp or certain fish they don't like because of that texture. It's always because of the way it's cooked. Take that and do a cold smoke if possible, which you put a fire and you pipe the smoke into it. There are 1,000 designs for that online, but that's a really good way to do it. Of course, fried is always good, but when you get a really big one that's got a lot of fat on it, I do think a little Creole seasoning, salt, cold smoke over some good hardwood smoke, even if it's just oak, is going to be really nice, and it's going to keep like that for months. I mean, if you keep it cold, it'll keep for years like that. Pickled fish is great. You can do a pickle brine with vinegar and water and some pickling spices. Again, the recipes are in the Omnivore's Guide to Home Cooking. Grab that one for free if you want during Lent, right? Absolutely love anything in the herring family done that way. But bluegill, the sunfish, the little sunfish, bass, that would probably just as good. I'll put it just as good and sometimes better than having it breaded and fried. So good, actually. So where was I? I was talking about Bladder Campion. Which you should not use as a fish poison, but you can tell I love to fish and I love to eat fish. So the leaves are good. They kind of taste like fresh garden peas with a little bit of bitterness. And this traditionally is actually used a lot, especially in Italy. Different parts of Europe, France especially. I think maybe Switzerland, Austria, but Italy big time. And they do a risotto. That's really the most popular way to eat it. Like I said, it kind of has a taste like fresh garden peas, and you can put it in soups. You can use it as a pot herb. Just cook it and eat it. But yeah, I don't eat a lot of risotto. It's not my thing. It's good, but I don't eat a lot of short grain rice. Maybe a little sushi every now and then. Maybe a little risotto. I grew up on long grain rice, and that's what I'm used to. But so. For me, because it does taste like, to do a risotto, you take that rice and you cook it with stock, and you add a little stock at a time, your vegetables, and it comes out this like creamy. It's very nice, but like it's a short grain is starchier than long grain rice. I don't do that. So my favorite way to cook Bladder Campion, is really a pot roast with rice and gravy. Okay, I love a good beef pot roast. So I'm going to look for a chuck roast, sirloin tip. My favorite is shoulder, actually, shoulder roast. That's close to the brisket. It's got really good flavor. Uh, Take that meat and just rub it with a little salt. Put some oil in a pan. You can use beef. You can use deer meat. Any kind of red meat you can like that you like. You can do a pork roast if you want. Tell them what hurt my feelings. It's good stuff. Get a big, big cast iron Dutch oven's what I like to use. But any kind of deep, preferably cast iron pan will be just fine. Put some salt in there. Brown the meat on all sides at about a medium-high heat. Remove it. Okay. Add a little more oil and finely slice chopped onions. When the onions are translucent, add chopped mushrooms, brown it all together with a little salt. Push that to the edges of the pot if it's big enough. If not, take them out. Add equal parts, like say 2 tablespoons of any natural fat you like. Butter, lard, olive oil, I don't care what it is. Beef tallow, whatever you like. And I do use a lot of beef tallow and suet and a lot of fats from red meat. And they're really delicious. In fact, some of the best French fries you can make, either fried in beef tallow. That's why McDonald's fries used to be so good. Just before the vegans went after them, they actually used to fry their French fries in beef tallow, which is beef fat, and it's delicious. George Herder said that fish fried in beef tallow was his absolute favorite. I've tried it. It's really good. Let me think. What would there be anything better? Oh, bacon fat. Oh, fries fried in duck fat are, oh my gosh, duck fat is probably the best fat. But I'm just saying, okay, forget fries for a minute. Put 2 tablespoons of fat in there and an equal amount of all-purpose flour. Brown the flour in the pot, stirring until it smells nutty and done. Do not let it burn. Pour in some stock, broth, or water, or red wine, or beer, whatever you like, and make a gravy. Return the meat, onions, mushrooms to the pot, add some chopped celery, carrots, and either some green peas or Bladder Campion, which tastes like green peas. So it works really well that way, or both. Toss in any other veggies you like. Asparagus, absolutely wonderful. Corn, chopped radish or turnip actually is really good. That just kind of boils in there and it gives it a flavor that you don't get from just raw radishes. The turnip flavor, it's such a nice depth there, and it goes really well with Bladder Campion, which also has a little bitterness. Most folks love to put potatoes in the gravy. That is not my thing, okay? I don't like potatoes cooked with the pot roast. I like to make my mashed potatoes on the side and serve gravy over the mashed potatoes. That's my preference. You do what you like. I'll definitely toss in some Jerusalem artichokes. They're a potato like, wild tuber. Any other wild tubers you like. And we discussed several of them in my book. This is all from the Spring Foraging Cookbook. Another one you can buy it or get it for free during Lent. We discussed many tubers, evening primrose roots. There's several. The roots of daylilies, absolutely fantastic in there. But anyway, just put in whatever you like. Definitely some herbs. Thyme and parsley I would consider essential. Salt and pepper to taste. I like to serve the gravy either over mashed potatoes or rice, so that's going to go in a separate pot for me. And if you do either one, I'd put some butter on it and the gravy on top of it. Plenty of butter makes everything good. And you can add a little more liquid to the gravy to stretch it out. And, really, even if I just made gravy with nothing but butter and flour and water, which, in an onion base, I do that quite often, definitely I'll add some red wine to it. It just brings out the flavor of the meat. You can add a little tomato paste if you want to sweeten it up a little bit. I don't add, I never add sugar, so tomato paste, maybe. A carrot or two brings a nice sweetness to it. Parsnips, always good, but it's up to you. So just get your browned meat is then going to braise, essentially, in the gravy, along with the vegetables that are just going to kind of boil and cook down in there until they get soft. And once the vegetables are soft, go for it. Who doesn't like a good pot roast. Just keep simmering it covered until the meat begins to fall apart, till you can pull it apart with a fork, and you're good to go. And yeah, so that's probably my go-to recipe for Bladder Campion. I cannot think of a better recipe. Now, if you are a accomplished risotto maker, do try it either along with or instead of fresh garden peas. That is the most traditional way to eat Bladder Campion. But as I'm not, I'd much rather have brown gravy and beef over buttered rice. I'm from North Carolina. I'm not from Italy. That's the way I'm going to go for it. And whereas the flavors are somewhat similar, they're also distinctly different. And yeah, I don't think you're ever going to look at that plant the same way again. It is a beautiful wildflower, but when you taste this once in good brown gravy with a pot roast, and like I said, it can be anything, a bear roast, beef, buffalo, I don't care. Good meat cooked in good brown gravy with onions, thyme, parsley. That may be my actual, and mushrooms, that may be my actual favorite thing on earth. It's like James Gregory, the Southern comedian, said, where I come from, gravy is considered a beverage. I mean, I am a gravy fanatic, so long as it is real gravy made from scratch, not something that came out of a can, not something that came out of a package. I'm very adamant about that in both the Spring Foraging Cookbook and the Omnivore's Guide. Learn to make real gravy, and it is life-changing. It maybe actually make life worth living. I would not wish to live without gravy. That would be a sad, miserable existence, in my opinion. Yeah, I have to have my gravy. All right, so now let's get into the medicinal plants for the week. And this is from my book, The Medicinal Weeds and Grasses of the American Southeast. First one's really brief. I've only got a little info on it, and then we'll move into one that's a lot more well-known. It's Galansoga quadriridiata. Okay, I'm not going to try to say that twice. Quadriridiata. You see the problem. Well, I'm going to just call it Galansoga. That's actually how most people refer to it. It's also known as fringe quickweed, hairy Galansoga, Peruvian daisy, and shaggy soldier. In England, traditionally, it's called gallant soldier. Really, I think it's a very pretty name for a plant. Gallant soldier, I mean brave soldier, well, gallant means both brave and virtuous, I guess. So anyway, just basically just a couple uses for this. It's a wound herb, essentially. And plants for future states, when rubbed onto the body, the plant is useful in treating nettle stings. The juice of the plant is applied to treat wounds. It helps coagulate the blood of fresh cuts and wounds. So, at one point, it may have been a soldier's herb, like yarrow and so many others, bugleweed, Ajuga repens. Soldiers used to carry certain herbs to treat wounds, and more than likely, Galansoga, also known as gallant soldier in English, had that reputation as being a soldier's herb. In America, it's considered a weed that people are told to spray with Roundup. Let's always remember, these plants have a use. We just have to learn what it is. The one that you're going to probably be far more familiar with, or since I've just referenced the English, I should use proper grammar, with which you will likely be far more familiar, is Galium. Galium aperine especially. That's bedstraw, cleavers. I mean, they're everywhere. They grow, you'll see them in parking lots, you'll see them in driveways, you'll see them side of the road, you'll see them in pastures. Also known as catchweed, bedstraw, goosegrass, sticky willy. I love that name, sticky willy. Sticky weed, Velcro plant. Bedstraw is probably one of the most common names for it. Ladies' bedstraw. This plant has sticky little hairs, and it sticks to everything. It'll get all over your pants if you walk through a field full of it. Tongue tied again. All right, so Galium is one of the most useful and common plants in herbal medicine. Perhaps only the dandelion is less appreciated outside of herbalism. I'm serious. This is, I mean, considered a weed. State of North Carolina would love to have it eradicated. It is literally one of the most useful and overlooked medicinal herbs known to man. Going way back to Dioscorides, over 2,000 years ago in the Greek tradition, he said Galium is called this because it coagulates milk in place of rennet. You can actually, it was called gallion in his language, Gallion, and you could use it to make cheese. Rennet is a substance that comes from the stomach of a calf, and it's what we use to make cheese. It may sound disgusting to you if you've never made cheese. I get that. I grew up at a farm. I know what life on a farm is actually all about. And we do use natural products wherever we find them if they work. And cheese traditionally has been made from rennet, which comes from the stomach of a calf. Galium, or gallion, as Dioscorides called it, is a plant that has similar properties to coagulate milk. Stinging nettles do the same, by the way. There are just a few. There are vegetarian cheeses made without rennet. Vegans are... Oh, let me see. It's Lent. Maybe I shouldn't insult somebody. Vegans are misguided enough not to appreciate that cheese is a natural, wonderful food that God intended for all man. I would say something far more insulting, usually. I don't have much respect for the vegan diet, as you know, if you've listened to this show. So, he gives the description of it. I just say pull it up online because you know this plant. You've seen it. You've picked it off your pants. You've pulled it out of your gardens. Bedstraw, cleavers, they grow everywhere. And it was brought by Europeans to be used as herbal medicine. I mean, that's one of the reasons they grow everywhere. They said good smeared on burns, stops flows of blood. Also mixed with a waxy rose ointment and placed in the sun until it turns white. This medicine is called acopin. I don't know what they used it. They don't tell me what they used acopin from, but they said that the root was aphrodisiac. I don't know. It grows in marshy places and also was called Galarium or Galachium in ancient Greece. Now, by 1500s England, Elizabethan England, Gerard said the flowers of yellow maid's hair, that was Galium or lady's bedstraw or whatever you want to call it, Cleavers, as Dioscorides writeth, is used in ointments against burning and stauncheth the blood, which, as he said, helps stop blood. Put into a cerode or seri cloth of roses and set sunning in a glass. He's really just repeating what Dioscorides said, updated 1500 years, with olive oil until it be white. Is good to anoint the wearied traveler. So that must be what that was used for. Maybe it helped with sore muscles. The wearied traveler, I don't know. It was refreshing somehow. I don't know. He said, the root thereof drunken wine stirreth up bodily lust, and the flowers smelled unto work the same effect. Again, he's saying it's an aphrodisiac. I have no idea. I have pulled plenty of it as weeds. I have also used it herbally, and I can't say it's ever excited me very much, but it is considered more a woman's herb, so let's bear that in mind. The herb thereof is used for rennet to make cheese, and he goes back to really ancient authors, giving reference to that. Apparently in Tuscany, 3,000 years ago or more, that was the preferred way to coagulate sheep and goat's milk. That was said to give it a more sweet and pleasanter taste than animal rennet, which is very nice. But he said it's also wholesome and used especially to break the stones, so good for kidney and bladder stones. The people of Cheshire in his time, where the best cheese is made, do use it in their rennet, esteeming greatly that of the cheese above other made without it. In other words, Cheshire is really one of the centers of England for cheese making, and some of the finest cheeses in the world. That's English cheddars and Oh, especially that, oh, what is that, Hunter's cheese? Oh, love that stuff. It's these um, alternating layers of cheddar and blue cheese. Oh my gosh, that is like one of my favorite cheeses on earth. Ridiculously expensive and hard to find. I haven't seen it in a store since I was a kid when we carried it in my family grocery store that specialized in imported cheeses. Absolutely delicious. But Cheshire, they were using Galium, yeah, as opposed to an animal rennet, finding that it had a better flavor. And I absolutely don't doubt that. That's one of the expert centers on earth. You know, you think of the English not having a great food tradition. Well, let me tell you, when it comes to cheese and ale, they nailed it. Brown ale and cheese. Anyway, he says, we find nothing extant in the ancient writers of the virtues and faculties of the white kind, but are as herbs never had in their use for physic or surgery. Again, that old, Shakespearean Elizabethan language. He's just saying he doesn't know anything about the white. He only knows about the yellow flowering Galium. But within 100 years later, Culpeper comes along calling it Lady's Bedstraw, which is the name. It's far more well known through much of herbal history following this point, and now we probably would call it equally often Cleavers or just Galium. He says, he gives a long description of it and says that there's also a variety that grew in England with white flowers. So he used them interchangeably. Okay, government and virtues. He said they are both herbs of Venus. And actually, all he means of that is they are good herbs for women. He said they strengthen the parts, both internal and external, which she rules. So, a women's herb, good for women's reproductive issues. The decoction of the former of these being drank is good to break the stone, provoke urine, and to stay inward bleedings, to heal all inward wounds. The herb or flower being bruised and put up the nostrils, staying the bleedeth likewise. It's actually been used very often to stop nosebleeds, that's all he's saying. The flowers and herb being made into an oil by being set in the sun and changed after it hath stood 10 or 12 days, or into an ointment being boiled, oil and wax. I mean, he goes on and on about how to do it. Helps with the burns of fire or scalds from water. Also, the decoction of the herb and flowers good to bathe the feet of travelers. So it was specifically the feet. You see, sometimes we have to go through about 1,500 years of herbal lore before we actually find out what the first author meant. And it's true. These are not. It takes a long time to learn all the obscure words. That's why I always try to make everything as simple as possible. I don't like having a barrier to entry just because someone doesn't have an archaic medical encyclopedia beside them to define every word, or dictionary, I guess. The decoction can be used warm, and the joints afterwards anointed with the ointment. It helpeth the dry scab and the itch in children. And the herb with the white flowers also very good for the sinews, arteries, and joints, to comfort and strengthen them after travel, colds, and pains. Getting more up to modern times, Miss Grieve in the 1930s tells us about the English tradition that the English name of the plant was Our Lady's Bedstraw, and that comes from Our Lady, the Mother of God. England once being a Catholic nation, until King Henry VIII was told he couldn't cut his wife's heads off anymore or get a divorce, and he decided to found a new church in 1500, saying he ruled with the authority of God. Take that how you will. My Catholic English ancestry did not take well to that, and most of them were killed. Subject for another day. If you like to hear about such things, you can go to my Uncensored Catholic podcast. But according to that legend, that Christian legend, it was one of the cradle herbs, i.e. a hay that was laid in the manger of the child Jesus at Bethlehem. She mentions again the plant has the property of curdling milk. She said the Highlanders and those in, she's talking the Scottish Highlands, they like to use it to make cheese. And she says that Galium comes from the Greek word gala, or milk. So there we have it. But to medicinal actions and uses. She said the two were alike. She said the Gallium verum contains the same chemical principles as Gallium aparin, which is the one we're actually talking about. She said it is used to a limited degree as a popular remedy in gravel stone and urinary diseases. In former times, it was highly esteemed as a remedy in epilepsy and hysteria, and was applied externally in cutaneous eruptions. That means eruptions of the skin, boils, sores, ulcerous sores of the skin, in either the form of recently expressed juice or decoction of the fresh plant. And that can also include acne. By the way, Galium, a tea made from it, is a folk remedy for acne as well. I think there'll be more mention of that when we get into the German tradition. An ointment, we already covered that. We covered Gerard, we covered Culpeper. She also mentioned that the yellow bedstraw could make a red dye. It was used in the flowers to make a dye used in dyeing fabrics, and the leaves yielded a good yellow dye. So another use, plant dyes are something you may actually find very interesting if you ever study them. John Keogh in the Irish tradition says when applied to burns, the crushed flowers alleviate the inflammation, and when applied to wounds, they can heal them. Such a preparation is a good stop to all kinds of hemorrhages, including nosebleeds. Now, getting into the German tradition, Brother Aloysius wrote, ladies' bread straw, or Galium verum in this case, used for epilepsy, hysteria, nervous and gastric pains, and the leaves poked into the nose help stop a nosebleed. Also in the German tradition, but moving up to about 1970s, 1980, Maria Treben says there are several species. Galium aparin, commonly known as Cleavers or Clivers or goosegrass, grows in meadows and fields. Galium verum, true bedstraw or yellow bedstraw, ladies' bedstraw. She said it grew in dry banks, chiefly near the sea. That would not be the case in America. I see it more in pastures. Our sea coasts are very different, of course, than Europe. Galium malungo hedge bedstraw has a pale yellow flower, yellow-white, and a faint honey-like odor. She says, I want to emphasize again that the fresh herbs have a greater medicinal value than the dried. And even in winter, the fresh shoots of Galium malungo are found under dry grass in snow-free places. And she was in Austria, so pretty darn cold there. So good to know. You can probably find that just about anywhere. All three species have similar medicinal qualities and are used the same way. Bedstraw tea rids the livers, kidney, and pancreas and spleen of toxic wastes. When suffering from a disorder of the lymphatic system, one should drink this tea daily. It is also beneficial for anemia, dropsy, and stitch in the side. That's the pain in the side you get when you're running. Well, it can also be caused by inflamed lungs, the pleroma around the lungs, or inflamed liver, among other issues. It makes an excellent wash for the face as it tightens the skin. The freshly pressed juice of bedstraw brushed on the affected parts of the skin and left to dry is very beneficial. It kind of pulls out inflammation from the skin. It's astringent, and that's why it can be good for acne. In popular medicines, bedstraw is recommended for epilepsy, hysteria, St. Vitus's dance. It's actually seizures, nervous complaints, suppressed urine, gravel and stones. For goiter, gargling with this tea throughout the day is effective. A woman told me she had not only lost the goiter, but her thyroid gland is now working normally. Every year I meet friends, a couple from Vienna, at a nape spa. We talked about Father Nape and his spas that were very, but still are very popular in Germanic-speaking countries. He was probably one of the great saviors of herbal medicine when allopathic or modern, pharmaceutical medicine was trying to outlaw it. Father Nape, Father Kunzel really preserved these traditions for us. She said, I found that the woman had a rather noticeable goiter. She was afraid of an operation. I recommended bedstraw. This is infused and still warm and is deeply gargled as often as possible. In February 1980, we met again at the Nape Spa, and behold, the goiter was no longer there. Overjoyed, she told me that her husband repeatedly collected fresh bedstraw for her. From the beginning, she perceived that the goiter became gradually smaller and it disappeared completely. In recent times, cases of constriction of the vocal cords have increased. It appears these cases are caused by a virus. It's interesting. This was, 1970s, 80s. I wonder what was going around that was causing vocal cords to be constricted. We'll just call it hoarseness. Yeah, maybe hoarseness. Anyway, gargling and rinsing with bedstraw tea brings swift relief. According to the Swiss Abbe Kunzel, that's Father Kunzel, if you're interested in his work, Gelanta Wittem, and I have written, it was actually my first book. We co-authored it. A translation of his Herbs and Weeds from late 1920s or so. As far as I know, it's the only existing translation of his work into English, and we gave it a modern herbal commentary. So really highly recommend that book. Father Kunzel actually went to court and proved that herbal medicine was more effective than modern pharmaceuticals in the time, and by law kept herbal medicine legal. And that was in the Germanic countries when the Nazis were literally trying to make herbal medicine illegal and make everything go through these heavily, socialistic, fascistic, bureaucratic systems. So very important a part of history in herbal medicine. But she said, according to the Swiss Abbe Kunzel, or Father Kunzel, it is also a reliable remedy for serious kidney disorders, even if other remedies have failed, especially if bedstraw is mixed in equal proportions with goldenrod and yellow dead nettle. In this case, the effect showed very quickly. He talks of 14 days. The tea is infused and a half cup is taken on an empty stomach 30 minutes before breakfast, and the rest is sipped throughout the day. For serious disorders, 4 cups are taken. In old times, bedstraw was very much esteemed by women for disorders of the uterus, to ease childbirth, and laid in the bed in their difficult hours. As the story goes, the latter was attributed to the Virgin Mary as Our Lady's bedstraw. She placed it in her bed. From another legend, she placed it as a soft pillow in Jesus' crib. The Silesian legend tells us that she took it as it was not eaten by the donkey. There is truth to this. Although cows like to eat it, pigs and donkeys won't touch it. Abbe Kunzel tells us in his writings of a 45-year-old man who suffered from a serious kidney disorder which worsened. Finally, one kidney had to be removed and the other was affected and did not function normally. The man began a treatment with bedstraw. Daily he drank 4 cups of the previous mentioned mixture of bedstraw, goldenrod, and yellow dead nettle. Frequently he sipped this tea, whereupon his complaint completely cleared up. The same tea mixture is used for all kidney disorders. That could be revolutionary medicine. Modern medicine is not good with kidney disease. Dialysis seems to be more it's always the last result, but it's like they get you there pretty darn quick. Anyway, while the noted botanist Richard Wilfoot in his book Health Through Medicinal Herbs points out that rinsing with and drinking bedstraw tea is an excellent remedy for cancer of the tongue, just as the freshly pressed juice mixed with butter is a remedy for cancerous growths and cancers like skin disorders. Dr. Heinrich Neuthaler writes in his The Herb Book the following about bedstraw. The white flowering bedstraw is recommended for cancer in some districts either today. She then gives stories about people who bedstraw seem to help cure their cancer. I am always I never say an herb will cure cancer. I say do your own research. Maria Trebin had quite a bit of experience, and she gives several stories in her books of cancers that were seemingly helped by bedstraw, Galium. So look into that. To me, it is a huge discredit to herbal medicine when people say, oh, this herb cures cancer, gives somebody a false hope, the person gets sicker or dies, and then all of herbal medicine is smeared as being charlatans. So I just avoid it. But I say, if you need to, look into Galium, ladies' bedstraw, cleavers, whatever you want to call it, and make your own decision. Start with Maria Trebin's book, and then look into more recent sources. In the Thomsonian tradition, which was early America, around 1900, they said this is well, I don't want to get into the description of it again, but said they like to combine it with marshmallow, and said it was a most soothing agent in the treatment of inflammatory diseases of the kidney, bladder, and urinary passage. Galium is best used in the form of a cold infusion, so they didn't like it as a hot tea, they liked it as a cold tea. During latter stages of scarlet fever, when there is a tendency to irritable conditions of the kidneys, Cleaver will prove a very acceptable and beneficial drink. For children and adults as well who suffer from scalding urine, burning urine, it is invaluable. In the inflammatory stage of gonorrhea, it relieves the irritation and soothes the nervous system. A hot infusion of it is diaphoretic, it means it helps break a fever. Also helped with the nervous pains of a fever and helps sweating. Dose of the tincture taken in hot and cold water indicated. From the Thomsonian actual Materia Medica, this was their official book they referred to. They said the juice has proven use in scorbutic eruptions. That's it's having to do with scurvy, for which 2 ounces may be taken 3 times a day. The herb, when green, prepared in the form of an ointment or infusion, may be usefully applied to scorbutic or scurvy difficulties or swellings upon the surface. This comes from a lack of vitamin C. Okay, so it may be used as strong tea and freely used daily as a beverage by those troubled with calculous, gravel, kidney stones, bladder stones, etc. Urinary gravel, as they used to call it, or calculi. I'm going to say that. They used a little more complex word. It is also useful in dropsy, that's edema retaining water, so it has some diuretic properties. Operates as a hydragogue, a gentle aperient and diuretic. That would mean it's increased saliva, sweating, and urine. Also, they're very useful for those who are troubled with costiousness or torpidity of the bowels. In other words, could kind of help get you going. Used for strangury and dropsy, as I said, that's retaining water. They like to combine cleavers, or clivers as they call it, with parsley root, juniper berries, and flaxseed. Yeah, it's going to be pretty darn strong on the kidney, so I can definitely see that. Used as a diuretic, stimulant, diaphoretic, etc. A menagogue would help bring on menses. Makes sense. The American Materia Medica, this is getting more into modern pharmaceutical use, says cleavers are diuretic, aperient, refrigerant, means cooling actually, and antiscorbutic means it helps with scurvy. So they have vitamin C in them, in other words. May be used with much advantage in acute nephritis, cystitis, and gonorrhea. So we're talking cystitis, really bad bladder infections that can cause tissue damage. Nephritis, that's kidney inflammation. Gonorrhea, which is a venereal disease. As it is refrigerant, lessening the irritation and inflammation of the affected parts, and diminishing the acridity or the acidity of the urine, the irritating quality of it when it burns. It should not be used, however, in torpid or debilitated states of these organs. So when they were really weakened, in other words. It has been used with benefit as a diuretic and refrigerant drink in acute febrile and inflammatory diseases. It's fevers and inflammation. Almost invariably increasing the flow of urine, it has the advantage of agreeing well with the stomach. Other species of Galium possess similar virtues and may be substituted for this. So by the 1860s, Resources of Southern Fields and Forests says valuable as a refrigerant and diuretic, beneficial in many diseases of the urinary organs such as suppressed urine, calculous affections, that's again kidney stones, bladder stones, etc., inflammation of the kidneys and bladder, scalding urine, and gonorrhea. It is contraindicated in diseases of passive character because of its refrigerant and sedative effects upon the system, but may be used freely in fevers and all acute diseases. By 1898, King's Medical Dispensatory tells us valuable refrigerant, diuretic, beneficial in many diseases of the urinary organs, etc. They're saying essentially the same thing. I'm just going to skim this if I see anything new that jumps out at me. Oh, okay. They do get into inflammatory skin issues. They say it'll actually remove freckles from the face. Don't know if it's true or not. Okay, no idea. But they say that, yeah, it does. But they also talk about acne. They say it's very good for cutaneous eruptions of the face. So we're talking zits, essentially. It has been found useful in many cutaneous diseases, including psoriasis, eczema, lichen, cancer. Lichen's a skin growth. Kind of looks like a lichen. That's sort of the mushroomy type thing that grows on a rock, okay? Cancer and scrofula. And those scrofula are very hard, inflamed glands. Galium tinctorum is said to be nervine, antispasmodic, expectorant, and diaphoretic. It has been used successfully in asthma, cough, chronic bronchitis, and appears to exert an influence principally upon the respiratory organs. They also said it was very good for dysuria, it's a menstrual disorder, painful menses, renal and cystic irritation, burning, diuretic and inflammatory tracts, urinary tract, so good for the whole urinary and reproductive system. Jethro Kloss, we're talking more like 1920s now, was using it. It says one of the best remedies for kidney and bladder troubles, particularly burning or suppressed urine, especially when used with broom, uvaursi, bucha, or marshmallow, all urinary and reproductive herbs, especially women's herbs, essentially. Great for bladder infections and cystitis and such as that. Due to its refrigerant properties, is excellent in all cases of fever, scarlet fever, measles, and acute diseases. Good in many skin diseases, such as cancer, scrofula, severe cases of eczema, and inflammatory stages of gonorrhea. Excellent for stones of the bladder, scurvy, and dropsy. And getting up to modern use, let's see. Plants for a Future says of Lady's Bedstraw, it has a long history as an herbal medicine, though it is little used in modern medicine, which is a shame because it's quite useful, obviously. Its main application is as a diuretic and as treatment for skin complaints. The leaves, stems, and flowering shoots are antispasmodic, astringent, diuretic, good for foot care. Lithotropic, which means helps get rid of the kidney stones again, the gravel, the calculi, as they said, and vulnerary, which means wound healing. The plant is used as a remedy in gravel, stone, and urinary disorders, and is believed to be a remedy for epilepsy. I don't know, but they used to believe that some epileptic seizures could be caused by suppressed urine. That is more of a folk use than anything I know that's been clinically proven. But I don't know. A powder made from the fresh plant is used to soothe reddened skin and reduce inflammation, while the plant may also be used as a poultice on cuts, skin infections, slow healing wounds, etc. The plant is harvested as it comes into flower and dried for later use. A number of species of the genus contain aspergilloside, a substance that produces coumarin and gives the scent of new mown hay. Very true. That it is one of the plants that, when dried, has that kind of vanilla hay-like scent. And it can be somewhat blood thinning. You don't want to combine it with, obviously, Coumadin or a pharmaceutical blood thinner. That's a caution you want to use. But the aspergilloside can also be converted into prostaglandins, hormone-like compounds that stimulate the uterus and affect blood vessels, which may be why it was considered to be an aphrodisiac even over 2,000 years ago. And the genus is of great interest to the pharmaceutical industry, or it was when that was written. I haven't heard anything more about it. But Cloverleaf Farms does give their encyclopedia of herbs. It does give that warning that excessive doses can cause internal bleeding. It has the coumarin, which is blood thinning, and could cause circulatory problems during pregnancy. So definitely want to be very careful with that. And in kidney disease, she says, it says do not use if there are existing kidney problems. Consult with your doctor. Could be beneficial or could be harmful. It just really depends on a case-by-case basis. And I'll see if there's anything else I need to tell you here. Key actions: anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, diuretic, induces sleep. Have not noticed that it does, but according to Cloverleaf Farms, it does. Lymphatic cleanser, that is one of its more traditional uses. Mild astringent. They say Infusions are taken for kidney stones and other urinary problems, as well as serving as a cooling drink for fevers. Juice obtained from the fresh plant is used in such serious illnesses as cancer, and is a strong diuretic to rid the body of toxins. Is used for kidney stones and other urinary problems, including prostate disorders, and makes an effective lymph cleanser for a range of conditions. Tinctures are used for the same conditions as infusions and can be combined with other lymphatic detoxifying herbs such as poke root, which is one I use, but many people consider it to be poisonous, so again, do your own research. Compresses made for the infusion can be applied to burns, grazes, ulcers, and other skin inflammation. Creams regularly used to relieve psoriasis. Hair rinses of the infusion to treat dandruff and scaling scalp problems, or psoriasis of the scalp, psoriatic dandruff and such. Young shoots have been a popular cleansing tonic in the spring. It appears very early. Yes, it can be eaten as a vegetable. I think I have, yes. I mean, it's one that we look for as a foraging plant as well. It's cooked like spinach, basically. It's pretty darn tasty. Traditional uses, I think we've been through all of that. They do say it's also good for swollen lymph glands. This is a general detoxifying agent in such serious illnesses as cancer. Again, I don't make any recommendations here one way or the other, but very good for psoriasis and as a wash for sunburns, blisters, ulcers, festering glands, fibrocystic breast lumps, essentially, and may help induce sleep. Medicinally, bruised leaves are applied to wounds, taken for internal complaints such as stomach pains. However, large doses of the tea can cause dizziness and vomiting, so don't do that. Says in France, ladies' bedstraw has a long-standing reputation for being a valuable herb used for epilepsy, but is rarely used for that today. So, again, that's something you'll have to look into. It says herbalists value all parts of the plant from its roots to its seeds, which are dried, roasted to make a coffee substitute, and the plant can be cooked and eaten as a vegetable, as we said. And the Peterson Field Guide just says herbal tea traditionally taken as a diuretic, blood purifier, used for bladder and kidney inflammations, dropsy, kidney stones, fevers. Juice of the herb used for scurvy. Herb tea used internally and externally as a folk cancer remedy. The juice contains citric acid, reported to have an anti-tumor capacity. Experimentally, extracts lower the blood pressure. Also contains asparagine, which is anti-inflammatory. So, y'all, that's pretty comprehensive, actually, for Galium. I think we will wrap it up there. I hope you have a wonderful week. Be sure to take advantage of that book offer if you're interested, and I'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.